Marcus Chen never imagined that sitting in the wrong chair would start an interstellar incident, spark a revolution, and somehow make him the most wanted human in 3 galaxies. What began as a simple diplomatic mission to represent Earth at the prestigious Zephyrian Royal Gala quickly spiraled into chaos when he unknowingly claimed the ancient throne of Bonds, a seat reserved for the future consort of Princess Queen Lyralii, the most powerful being in the known universe. In a galaxy where humans are considered primitive newcomers, where entire civilizations bow to the Zephyrian Empire's might, and where breaking royal protocol can mean death or worse, Marcus's accidental claim has done the impossible. It's made the untouchable Princess Queen interested. Now, as ancient laws clash with political necessity and Marcus discovers that humans possess something no other species has ever shown, he must navigate deadly court intrigue, face challenges that have killed seasoned warriors, and somehow prove that Earth's newest representative is more than just a lucky fool. But, in a universe where strength determines worth and the Princess Queen has never been denied anything she desires, Marcus is about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous position in the galaxy isn't on a battlefield, it's at a dinner party where you've accidentally proposed to the most lethal woman alive. The galaxy will never be the same. And neither will Marcus Chen. Marcus Chen adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform for the 100th time as the shuttle approached the massive Zephyrian flagship. Through the viewport, the vessel looked less like a ship and more like a floating city made of crystalline spires and flowing metal that seemed to breathe with its own life. The eternal majesty stretched for kilometers in every direction, its bioluminescent hull patterns pulsing in hypnotic waves of blue and gold. "Remember, Mr. Chen," Ambassador Williams said, her voice tight with nervous energy, "you're here to observe and learn. Earth's first invitation to a Zephyrian royal gala is a tremendous honor. Don't touch anything, don't speak unless spoken to, and, for the love of everything sacred, don't sit anywhere unless explicitly told to do so." Marcus nodded, though his attention was caught by the incredible sight before them. Dozens of ships from across the galaxy surrounded the flagship, sleek vessels from the tech-obsessed Quantum Collective, organic-looking craft from the hive-minded Synthesis, and the geometric perfection of crystalline order ships. Each represented civilizations that had existed for millennia before humans had even discovered fire. "The Zephyrians have ruled this sector for over 50,000 years, Williams continued, consulting her datapad. Their Princess Queen Lyralii is said to be over 2,000 years old and has never been defeated in combat, negotiation, or any form of challenge. She's conquered 17 star systems personally and turned 3 different species from enemies into devoted allies through sheer force of personality. We're here because Earth needs their protection, their technology, and their trade routes. Do not mess this up." The shuttle docked with a gentle hum, and Marcus felt his stomach flutter as they were escorted through corridors that defied physics. The walls seemed to be made of liquid starlight, flowing and shifting in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Their Zephyrian guide, a tall being with skin like polished silver and eyes that held the depth of nebulae, moved with fluid grace that made Marcus feel clumsy just watching. "The grand ballroom approaches," their guide said in a voice like wind chimes. "Ambassador Williams, your assigned position has been prepared in the Observer's Gallery. Your apprentice will be seated with the Junior Diplomatic Corps." Marcus felt a flash of irritation at being called an apprentice but said nothing. At 28, he was one of Earth's youngest diplomatic attaches, but his xenobiology degree and language skills had earned him a spot on this mission. Still, compared to beings who measured their age in centuries, he supposed he was practically a child. They entered the grand ballroom, and Marcus's breath caught. The space was impossibly vast, with a ceiling that showed a real-time view of the galaxy slowly rotating overhead. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species mingled in the space, their conversations creating a symphony of languages, harmonics, and even telepathic resonances that made the air itself seem alive. At the far end of the ballroom, on a raised dais, sat the most magnificent sight Marcus had ever seen. Princess Queen Lyralii reclined on what could only be called a throne, but it was unlike anything from Earth's history books. The seat seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal that contained swirling galaxies within its depths. The Princess Queen herself was breathtaking, tall even by Zephyrian standards, with skin that shifted between silver and gold like liquid metal, and hair that moved as if underwater, defying gravity as it flowed around her shoulders in impossible patterns. Her eyes were the most striking feature, deep violet that seemed to contain actual stars, and, when her gaze swept across the room, Marcus felt as though she could see through not just him, but through time itself. She wore robes that seemed to be cut from the fabric of space itself, dark material shot through with points of light that twinkled like distant suns. "She's incredible," Marcus whispered, unable to help himself. "She's dangerous," Williams replied sharply. "Remember your place." Their guide led them through the crowd, past beings Marcus had only read about in xenobiology texts. He saw a delegation from the burning worlds, their crystalline bodies glowing with internal fire. A group of voidwalkers phase-shifted in and out of visibility as they communicated through dimensional manipulation. Near a fountain that flowed upward in defiance of gravity, several cloud shepherds from the gas giant colonies floated in environmental suits that contained their gaseous forms. "The junior diplomatic section," their guide announced, gesturing to an area with several rows of seats facing the dais. "Choose any available position." Williams was led away toward the observers' gallery, leaving Marcus alone among the junior diplomats. He looked around at the other occupants of the section, young beings from various species, all looking as nervous as he felt. There were empty seats scattered throughout, and Marcus began making his way toward one in the middle row. "Excuse me," he said to a lizard-like being sitting nearby, "is this seat taken?" The being's head turned with mechanical precision, multiple eyes focusing on Marcus before widening in what seemed like surprise. "Human? You are human, yes? I am Skith of the Scale Worlds. I have never seen human before. You appear much like the descriptions in the xenobiology databases, but smaller than expected. Nice to meet you, Skith. I'm Marcus Chen, from Earth." Marcus settled into the seat, grateful for the friendly contact. "This is my first intergalactic diplomatic function. Any advice?" Skith's head tilted. "Advice? Do not draw attention to yourself. The Princess Queen has been known to make examples of those who displease her. Last cycle, a quantum collective representative spoke out of turn during the formal presentations. She challenged him to single combat and defeated him using only her voice. The sonic frequency she generated liquefied his quantum matrix. Most unpleasant." Marcus swallowed hard. "Good to know. I'll keep quiet." The ballroom's ambient noise began to quiet as more beings found their seats. Marcus noticed that the area around him had become strangely empty. Other junior diplomats seemed to have moved away, leaving him sitting alone in what had become a small island of space. He looked around, confused, but before he could move, a deep harmonic tone filled the ballroom. The Princess Queen rose from her throne, and the effect was immediate. Every conversation stopped. Every being in the vast space turned to face her. The very air seemed to hold its breath. "Welcome, representatives of the known galaxies," her voice carried impossibly well through the space without any apparent amplification. It was a voice like music made solid, carrying harmonics that Marcus felt in his bones. "Tonight, we celebrate not just the prosperity of our alliance, but the continued expansion of civilized space into the dark reaches beyond." Marcus found himself leaning forward, captivated by the sheer presence she commanded. She moved as she spoke, her gestures flowing like dance, and the stars in her hair seemed to pulse in rhythm with her words. "As is tradition," she continued, "we begin tonight's festivities with the recognition of bonds, those who have chosen to bind their fates to the Zephyrian crown in the coming cycle." Marcus didn't understand what that meant, but he noticed a strange stirring in the crowd. Several beings had stood up, and they began moving toward specific seats that had somehow been marked with glowing symbols. These seats formed a pattern around the ballroom that Marcus was only now noticing. They seemed to create a complex geometric design when viewed from above. "Oh no," he heard someone whisper nearby. The voice was filled with horror. Marcus looked around, suddenly, noticing that glowing symbols had appeared on many seats, including the one he was sitting in. The symbol beneath him was different from the others, though. While the other symbols were simple geometric patterns, his was elaborate and ornate, with flowing designs that seemed to move and shift as he watched. "The throne of bonds," someone gasped. "Impossible," another voice whispered. "No one has claimed the throne of bonds in 300 years. Marcus tried to stand up, but found that he couldn't. The seat seemed to have somehow molded itself to him, holding him gently but firmly in place. Panic began to set in as he realized that every eye in the ballroom was now focused on him. The Princess Queen herself had stopped speaking and was staring directly at him, her violet eyes wide with what looked like shock. By the ancient laws, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the now silent ballroom, someone has claimed the throne of bonds. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. He tried to speak, to explain that this was a mistake, but no sound came out. The seat was doing something to him, filling him with a strange energy that made his skin tingle and his vision sharper. Who dares to claim partnership with the crown? The Princess Queen called out, her voice carrying a dangerous edge now. Who would bind their life to mine? Marcus found his voice suddenly freed. This is a mistake, he called out, his voice cracking slightly. I didn't know. I'm sorry. But, even as he spoke, he realized that the Princess Queen wasn't angry. She was studying him with an intensity that made him feel exposed, as if she could see through to his very soul. And, strangest of all, she was smiling. A human, she said, and her voice carried amazement. In all my years, through all the challenges issued by warriors and princes and emperors, a human sits in the throne of bonds. She began walking down from her dais, her movement fluid and predatory. As she moved, the crowd parted before her like water. Marcus wanted to run, but the seat still held him fast. All he could do was watch as the most powerful being in the known galaxy approached him directly. Tell me your name, human, she said when she was close enough that he could see the individual stars swirling in her eyes. Marcus Chen, he managed. Diplomatic attaché from Earth. Ma'am. Your Majesty. Princess Queen. She laughed, and the sound was like silver bells mixed with distant thunder. Marcus Chen of Earth. Do you know what you have done? Made a terrible mistake? You have invoked the law of bonds, she said, her smile growing wider. By claiming that seat, you have declared yourself a candidate for the position of crown consort. You have challenged me to prove your worth as my equal. The ballroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. I didn't mean to. Can I unclaim it? The throne of bonds has not accepted anyone in 3 centuries, she said, her voice carrying fascination. It has rejected princes and emperors, war heroes and master diplomats. Yet it accepts you, a young human from a species barely out of their own solar system. She reached out and touched the arm of the throne, and Marcus felt a jolt of energy pass through him. The seat released him suddenly, and he nearly fell forward. The Princess Queen caught his arm with casual strength that suggested she could probably lift a starship if she wanted to. The throne recognizes you, she said quietly, her voice meant only for him. It sees something in you that I am now obliged to test. By ancient law, you now have the right to attempt the trials of worth. Should you succeed, you would become my consort and co-ruler of the Zephyrian Empire. Marcus stared at her, his mind reeling. And if I fail? No one has ever failed the trials of worth, she said, her smile turning predatory. They have only died. The ballroom had gone completely silent again. Marcus could feel thousands of eyes upon him, could sense the mixture of shock, awe, and terror radiating from the crowd. Ambassador Williams looked like she might faint from her position in the observers' gallery. However, the Princess Queen continued, still speaking quietly, you interest me, Marcus Chen of Earth. The throne's choice is unprecedented. I find myself curious about what makes a human worthy of its acceptance. She straightened and addressed the ballroom. By the ancient laws that govern our realm, Marcus Chen of Earth has claimed the throne of bonds and been accepted by its power. As is his right, he may choose to attempt the trials of worth. She turned back to Marcus. The choice is yours, human. You may walk away now, return to your ship, and never speak of this again. The diplomatic relationship between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire will continue as planned, and no harm will come to you or your people. Marcus felt hope flare in his chest. Or you can accept the challenge, she said, her violet eyes boring into his. You can attempt to prove that a human is worthy to stand beside the Princess Queen of the Zephyrian Empire. The trials will test everything you are, your courage, your intelligence, your strength, your heart. They will push you beyond every limit you thought you had. And, if I succeed? Then, you will have accomplished something no being in recorded history has managed, she said. You will have proven yourself my equal. Marcus looked around the ballroom at the sea of alien faces, all watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright disbelief. He thought of Earth, still struggling to make its place in the galactic community. He thought of the opportunities that could come from a real alliance with the Zephyrian Empire. He thought of the incredible being standing before him, offering him a choice that would change everything. He also thought about the fact that no one had ever failed the trials because they had all died. "I need a moment to think," he said. Princess Queen Lyralii nodded. "Of course. Such a decision should not be made lightly." She gestured, and the seat behind Marcus transformed, becoming comfortable and ordinary again. "Sit. Consider your choice. But know that dawn approaches, and, by law, you must decide before the next cycle begins." As she walked back toward her throne, Marcus sank into the now normal chair and tried to process what had just happened. Less than an hour ago, he had been a nervous diplomatic attaché hoping to avoid embarrassing Earth. Now he was apparently being offered the chance to become co-ruler of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. If he didn't die horribly in the attempt. Around him, the gala slowly resumed, but Marcus noticed that no one came near him anymore. He was apparently in some kind of ceremonial isolation until he made his decision. The only exception was Skiff, who slithered over with what Marcus was learning to recognize as excitement. "This is incredible," the reptilian being whispered. "You know what this means? If you attempt the trials, you will be the first human to ever face them. Whatever happens, you will make history." "Great," Marcus muttered. "I've always wanted to make history. I just hoped I'd live to see it written." From her throne, Princess Queen Lyralii watched him with those star-filled eyes, and Marcus found himself wondering what she was thinking. Was she hoping he would accept? Did she want him to walk away? And why had the throne of bonds accepted him when it had rejected so many others? As the night wore on and various entertainments began, demonstrations of power by different species, artistic presentations that defied physics, and musical performances that seemed to bend reality itself, Marcus found his mind racing through the implications of his choice. If he walked away, Earth would remain a minor player in galactic politics. They would have trade and protection, but they would never be equals. If he accepted the challenge and failed, he would die, but perhaps his attempt would earn Earth some respect. And if he succeeded, if he somehow managed to pass trials that had been designed for beings far stronger and older than any human, then Earth would have a voice at the highest levels of galactic civilization. The thought terrified him. It also excited him more than anything ever had in his life. As dawn approached and the gala began to wind down, Princess Queen Lyralii rose from her throne once more. The ballroom fell silent as she approached Marcus again, her expression unreadable. "The time for decision has come, Marcus Chen of Earth," she said. "What is your choice?" Marcus stood up slowly, his heart pounding. He looked out at the sea of alien faces, thought of Earth waiting for news of this historic first contact, and thought of the incredible woman standing before him who commanded the respect of entire galaxies. "I accept," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. "I will attempt the trials of worth." The Princess Queen's smile was radiant. "Excellent," she said. "Let the trials begin." The transport to the trial grounds was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Rather than using a conventional shuttle, Princess Queen Lyralii had summoned what she called a reality bridge, a shimmering pathway of crystallized spacetime that extended from the flagship to a massive structure that materialized in the void around them. The structure looked ancient beyond comprehension, its dark surfaces covered in symbols that seemed to move and shift when observed directly. "The crucible of worthiness," Lyralii explained as they walked along the impossible bridge, her robes flowing in the stellar wind. "Built by my ancestors 40,000 years ago to test those who would claim equality with the crown. It exists partially outside normal spacetime, drawing its challenges from the collective unconscious of the galaxy itself." Marcus tried not to look down at the infinite void beneath the bridge. Collective unconscious? "Every species' greatest fears, most profound hopes, and deepest truths," she said. "The trials adapt to each candidate, presenting challenges that reveal the true nature of their character. It will test not just your abilities, Marcus Chen, but your very soul." Behind them walked a procession of beings from across the galaxy. Word of a human accepting the trials of worth had spread like wildfire through the diplomatic community, and representatives from dozens of species had requested permission to witness the event. Ambassador Williams was among them, looking pale but determined. As they approached the structure, Marcus could see intricate geometric patterns carved into its surface that hurt to look at directly. The patterns seemed to exist in more dimensions than his eyes could process, creating an unsettling optical illusion that made his depth perception unreliable. The trials will be conducted in 3 phases, Lyralii continued. The trial of mind, which tests intelligence, wisdom, and understanding. The trial of spirit, which reveals the true nature of your character and will. And, finally, the trial of bonds, which determines whether you are capable of the partnership that rulership requires. They passed through an entrance that seemed to phase in and out of existence. Inside, the crucible was vast and empty, with walls that displayed swirling galaxies and nebulae in constant motion. At the center of the space stood a simple chair, not unlike the throne of bonds, but somehow more austere, more dangerous. The chair of truth, Lyralii said, gesturing toward it. It will connect you directly to the crucible's consciousness. Once you sit, the trials will begin, and they cannot be stopped until completion. Success or failure, you will not leave this chair until the trials reach their conclusion. Marcus stared at the seemingly innocent piece of furniture. How many people have sat in that chair? In the 3,000 years since its creation? Perhaps 50 beings. Princes, war heroes, master diplomats, emperor mages who commanded entire star systems. Her violet eyes met his. All failed. All died, Marcus said, not asking. Yes. The witnesses had arranged themselves around the perimeter of the chamber, maintaining a respectful distance from the chair of truth. Marcus could see their faces, some curious, some skeptical, some clearly expecting to watch him die horribly. Ambassador Williams caught his eye and gave him a small nod of encouragement. I must ask once more, Lyralii said quietly. Are you certain? There is no shame in withdrawing. Your species is young, your civilization new to the galaxy. Perhaps in a few centuries, I'm certain, Marcus interrupted. If I'm going to fail, better to fail spectacularly than to spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been. Her smile was genuinely warm. Spoken like someone the throne would choose. She gestured toward the chair. Then, let us begin. Marcus walked across the vast floor, his footsteps echoing strangely in the space. As he approached the chair of truth, he could feel energy radiating from it, not threatening, exactly, but intense. Like standing near a star. He paused before sitting down, looking back at the assembled crowd. If this goes badly, he called out, tell Earth that we tried. Then, he sat down. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The chair seemed to flow around him, not constraining him but connecting to him in ways that went beyond the physical. He felt his consciousness expand suddenly, touching the vast intelligence that governed the crucible. It was ancient beyond measure, patient, and utterly alien. Welcome, young consciousness, the voice spoke directly into his mind, carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with reality itself. I am the keeper of trials. I have waited long to test a human, you know about humans? Marcus thought back. I know all species that reach for the stars. Humans are interesting. Young but ambitious. Weak but stubborn. Foolish but occasionally wise. We shall see what category you represent. The chamber around Marcus began to dissolve, replaced by something else entirely. He found himself standing in what looked like a vast library, but the books were made of light and the shelves extended infinitely in all directions. The knowledge of entire civilizations floated around him in visible streams of data. The trial of mind begins, the keeper announced. Before you is the collective knowledge of the galaxy. Choose what you need to solve the crisis that now approaches. The scene shifted, and Marcus was suddenly standing on the bridge of a starship. Through the viewport, he could see a massive space station in the distance, its hull breached and venting atmosphere. Emergency signals filled the communication channels, speaking in languages he somehow understood. Cascade failure in the quantum containment matrix, reported a holographic officer that materialized beside him. The station houses 50,000 beings from 12 different species. Total life support failure in approximately 18 minutes. No other ships in range. Marcus looked around the bridge, taking in the displays and controls. The ship's computers were showing him options, none of them good. He could reach the station, but the ship's maximum capacity was only 500 beings. He could attempt to stabilize the containment matrix, but the probability of success was less than 30%, and failure would create a quantum explosion that would destroy everything within a light-year radius. "Show me the station's specifications," he said. Data flowed across the displays. Marcus studied the layouts, the energy patterns, the species distributions. His mind raced through possibilities, discarding solutions that wouldn't work, building on ideas that might. "The Zephyrian emergency protocols," he said suddenly. "What are they for quantum containment failures?" "Protocol 77 Alpha," the computer responded. "Controlled collapse of the matrix into a stable microsingularity. Requires precise timing and a minimum safe distance of 50,000 kilometers. And the quantum collective's emergency protocols? Phase shift evacuation. Transfer all matter within the affected area into a parallel dimensional space until repairs can be completed." Marcus grinned. The individual protocols wouldn't work, but combined. "Computer, can we use the ship's quantum drive to create a localized phase shift field around the station while simultaneously triggering a controlled collapse of their containment matrix?" Calculating. "Yes, but it would require perfect timing and complete cooperation from the station's crew. Risk of catastrophic failure remains at 47%. Better than certain death," Marcus muttered. He opened communications to the station. "This is Marcus Chen aboard the rescue vessel Determination. I have a solution, but I need every person on that station to follow my instructions exactly. No questions, no debate. Trust me." What followed was the most intense 17 minutes of Marcus's life. He coordinated evacuation patterns, guided engineering teams through modifications to their quantum matrix, and synchronized the phase shift with the controlled collapse down to the microsecond. When it was over, the station hung in space surrounded by a shimmering bubble of displaced reality while its quantum systems stabilized. The scene dissolved back into the library of light. "Impressive asterisk," the keeper said. Asterisk, "you did not simply choose knowledge, you synthesized it. You found a solution that no single species had conceived by combining the wisdom of multiple civilizations. This is unexpected." Asterisk, "Humans are good at adaptation," Marcus said. "We learn from everyone." "Indeed. The trial of mind is complete. Prepare for the trial of spirit." Asterisk, the library faded, and Marcus found himself standing on what looked like a battlefield. The ground was scarred and burning, and the sky was filled with ships engaged in desperate combat. Around him, beings of various species fought and died in a conflict that seemed to have no end. But this wasn't like the space station simulation. This felt real. Marcus could smell the smoke, feel the heat of energy weapons discharge, hear the actual screams of the wounded and dying. "Help us!" A young Zephyrian soldier stumbled toward him, her silver skin streaked with blue blood. "The humans are retreating. They're abandoning us to die." Marcus looked around in confusion. "I'm human. I wouldn't look." She pointed across the battlefield, where Marcus could see human soldiers in Earth Alliance uniforms falling back to evacuation ships. "They promised to stand with us against the Void Hunters, but when the battle turned, they ran." Through the chaos, Marcus could see the enemy, beings that looked like living shadows with too many teeth and eyes like collapsed stars. They moved with terrible purpose, slaughtering everything in their path. "You could stop this," the young soldier said, pressing a weapon into Marcus's hands. "The tactical computer says that one person with the right training could activate the quantum artillery and destroy the Void Hunter command ship. But you'd have to stay behind to target it manually. You'd die in the bombardment." Marcus stared at the weapon, then at the retreating Earth ships, then at the dying Zephyrian soldiers around him. "How do I know this is real?" "Does it matter?" she asked. "If it's real, your species' honor depends on your choice. If it's a test, your character does. The simulation was perfect." Marcus could feel the weight of the weapon, smell the ozone from energy discharges, hear individual voices crying for help. Every instinct told him this was actually happening. He looked at the evacuation ships one more time, then, at the targeting console for the quantum artillery. The math was simple: stay and die to save the Zephyrian forces, or flee with his own species and live with the consequences. Marcus ran toward the artillery console. The next few minutes were a blur of combat and calculation. He fought his way through Void Hunter forces, using tactics he hadn't even known he possessed. When he reached the console, he began the targeting sequence just as the evacuation ships lifted off. "Marcus!" Ambassador Williams's voice crackled over his comm system. "Get to the shuttle. We're leaving now." "I can't," he said, adjusting the targeting parameters. "Someone has to stay to complete the targeting sequence." "That's not your responsibility." "Yes, it is," Marcus said quietly, watching the coordinates lock in. "If we're going to be part of the galactic community, we have to act like it." He pressed the firing key just as a Void Hunter energy blast caught him in the chest. The pain was real. The dying was real. And, as his vision faded, Marcus saw the quantum artillery strike home, destroying the Void Hunter command ship and turning the tide of battle. Then, he was back in the chair of truth, gasping and shaking. "Most interesting, asterisk," the keeper said. Asterisk, faced with a choice between survival and honor, between species loyalty and moral duty, you chose sacrifice. "This is not what I expected from your psychological profile." Asterisk, what did you expect? "Humans are known for self-preservation and tribal thinking. Your species fights wars over minor differences and struggles to cooperate even among yourselves. Yet you chose to die for beings you had never met, to preserve the honor of a species that had already abandoned the field." Asterisk, Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead. "We're not perfect. But we're learning. Indeed. The trial of spirit is complete. One trial remains." Asterisk, the chamber shifted one final time, and Marcus found himself back on the flagship's grand ballroom, but it was different now. Older, somehow, and emptier. Princess Queen Lyralii stood before him, but she looked younger, less certain. Around them, the space was filled not with diplomatic guests but with what looked like memories made solid. "This is the night I first claimed the throne," Lyralii said, but her voice carried harmonics that suggested the keeper was speaking through her. "I was barely 200 years old, considered an upstart child by the established powers. They challenged my right to rule, questioned whether someone so young could command an empire." The memories played around them like holograms. Marcus saw a younger Lyralii facing down beings of incredible power and presence, saw her prove herself through trials of combat and wit, saw her gradually earn the respect and, then, loyalty of those who had doubted her. "I have ruled alone for 18 centuries, the Lyralii keeper said. "I have had advisors, generals, diplomats, but never an equal. Never someone who could share the burden of command, the weight of decisions that affect billions of lives." The memory shifted, showing Marcus glimpses of the loneliness that came with absolute power, moments when Lyralii stood alone on her bridge, making decisions that would determine the fate of entire worlds. Victories that had no one to share them with. Defeats that had to be borne in solitude. "The trial of bonds is simple," she continued. "I will show you what partnership with the crown means. You will experience the weight of command, the burden of absolute responsibility. If you can bear it without breaking, without losing yourself to the power or the pressure, then you will have proven yourself worthy. And if I can't? Then you will understand why the throne has remained empty for so long." The scene shifted, and Marcus found himself sitting on the crystal throne, looking out over a vast tactical display. The Zephyrian Empire was at war with something called the entropy spiral, and the situation was desperate. Entire star systems were going dark, consumed by an enemy that seemed to feed on the very structure of reality. "The spiral has breached the outer rim," reported a general whose species Marcus didn't recognize. "Refugee ships are streaming in from 17 systems. We estimate 40 billion beings displaced so far." "Fleet status?" Marcus heard himself ask, his voice carrying Lyralii's authority. 60% losses in the last week. The enemy's entropy weapons are proving more effective than anticipated. Admiral Thyrex requests permission to fall back to the core worlds. Marcus felt the weight of the decision crushing down on him. Fall back and save the fleet, but abandon billions of beings to the entropy spiral. Stand and fight and risk losing everything in a futile gesture. Show me the tactical analysis, he said. Data flowed through his consciousness, and Marcus felt his awareness expand to encompass the entire scope of the conflict. He could see the pattern of the spiral's advance, the strengths and weaknesses of his fleet, the possible outcomes of every strategic choice. But, more than that, he could feel the lives depending on his decision. Every choice had a cost measured in the deaths of beings with families, dreams, hopes for the future. The weight of it was staggering. There, he said suddenly, highlighting a section of the tactical display. The spiral's advance has created a weak point in their dimensional matrix. If we concentrate our quantum artillery here, we can create a cascade failure that will disrupt their entropy field. The calculations show a 12% chance of success, the general reported. And it would require sacrificing the Third Fleet as a distraction. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the crushing responsibility of command. 12% chance of victory, against certain cost in lives. But the alternative was slow defeat and the eventual consumption of everything he had sworn to protect. Send the orders, he said. And may history forgive us. The battle that followed was the most intense experience of Marcus's life. He felt every ship lost, every life sacrificed, every moment of desperate hope and crushing fear. When the cascade finally triggered and the entropy spiral's advance collapsed into dimensional chaos, the victory felt hollow against the cost. But it was victory. The scene faded back to the chair of truth, and Marcus found himself face to face with the real Princess Queen Lyralii. Her violet eyes were wide with something that looked like amazement. The trials are complete, the keeper announced, its voice now coming from all around them. In 3,000 years, I have never witnessed such results. Did I pass? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. You did not simply pass, the keeper said. You excelled. In the trial of mind, you demonstrated synthesis and innovation beyond any previous candidate. In the trial of spirit, you chose honor over survival, sacrifice over safety. In the trial of bonds, you bore the weight of absolute responsibility without losing your humanity. Marcus looked at Princess Queen Lyralii, who was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. But, most importantly, the keeper continued, you have shown something no other candidate has ever demonstrated. Growth. Each trial changed you, taught you, made you more than you were before. This is the true mark of worthiness, not perfection, but the capacity to become more. The chair of truth released Marcus, and he stood on shaking legs. Around the chamber, the assembled witnesses were completely silent, their expressions ranging from shock to awe to outright disbelief. Princess Queen Lyralii approached him slowly, her movements graceful but somehow uncertain. Marcus Gen of Earth, she said formally, by right of trial and ancient law, I offer you the position of crown consort of the Zephyrian Empire. Will you accept? Marcus looked at her, this incredible being who commanded galaxies and bent space to her will, who was offering to share the most powerful throne in known space with a human who had accidentally sat in the wrong chair. I accept, he said. The coronation ceremony took place 3 days later in the Grand Cathedral of Stars, a massive structure that existed partially in normal space and partially in the quantum realm. The cathedral's walls were transparent aluminum that showed the swirling cosmos beyond, while the floor was made of crystallized time that reflected not just images, but moments from the past and future. Marcus stood before the altar of binding wearing ceremonial robes that had been crafted specifically for him, deep blue fabric embedded with actual starlight that moved and shifted across the material like living constellations. The weight of the moment pressed down on him almost as heavily as the weight of the crown that would soon rest on his head. Representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy had gathered to witness the event. The ceremony was being broadcast across thousands of worlds, watched by beings who had never imagined they would see a human crowned as co-ruler of the Zephyrian Empire. Ambassador Williams stood in the front row, tears streaming down her face as she watched a diplomatic attaché become one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Princess Queen Lyralii approached the altar wearing robes that seemed to be cut from the fabric of space itself, dark material shot through with points of light that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. In her hands, She carried a crown unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, a circlet of crystallized starlight that contained actual miniature galaxies spinning within its structure. By the ancient laws that bind reality itself, she began, her voice carrying across the vast cathedral without amplification. I, Lyralii of the Star Throne, Princess Queen of the Zephyrian Empire, Guardian of the Outer Reaches, and Speaker for the Void, bind myself in eternal partnership to Marcus Chen of Earth. She placed the crown on his head, and Marcus felt reality shift around him. The weight of the crown was negligible, but the responsibility it represented was staggering. Suddenly, he could sense the entire Zephyrian Empire, every ship, every world, every being under their protection. The sensation was overwhelming and exhilarating at the same time. Rise, Marcus Chen, Lyralii said, Prince Consort of the Zephyrian Empire, Guardian of Earth's interests, and my equal in all things. The cathedral erupted in harmonious sounds that substituted for applause among the various species represented. Marcus stood slowly, feeling the crown's connection to the quantum networks that managed the Empire's affairs. Information flowed through his consciousness, trade routes, defense positions, diplomatic negotiations, scientific research projects. It was like having access to the thoughts of an entire civilization. But, as the ceremony concluded and they moved to the reception, Marcus began to notice something troubling. While many of the assembled dignitaries offered congratulations, their body language suggested something different. He caught whispered conversations that cut off when he approached, saw meaningful glances exchanged when they thought he wasn't looking. You feel it too, Lyralii said quietly as they moved through the crowd. The undercurrent of doubt. They don't trust me, Marcus said. A human who's been in space for less than a century, suddenly, elevated to co-rule an empire that's existed for 50,000 years. Some don't trust you, she corrected. Others see opportunity in your inexperience. And a few are simply waiting to see if you will fail spectacularly. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of High Admiral Zareth, a being from the Crystal Orders whose body looked like living gemstone. His faceted eyes reflected the light in patterns that Marcus was learning to read as emotional indicators. Prince Consort, Zareth said, his voice like wind chimes made of metal. An honor to serve under your command. I trust you understand the complexities of your new position? I'm learning, Marcus replied carefully. I hope I can count on your guidance as I adjust to my responsibilities. Of course, Zareth said, but the light patterns in his eyes suggested something else entirely. Perhaps we might discuss fleet reorganization at your convenience? There are several strategic positions that could benefit from experienced leadership. Marcus felt Lyralii tense slightly beside him. I look forward to reviewing our current arrangements, he said diplomatically. Though I should mention that any major strategic changes will need careful consideration. After Zareth moved away, Lyralii leaned close. He was testing you, she said quietly. Zareth has been angling for control of the outer fleet for decades. He's hoping you'll be inexperienced enough to approve his request without understanding the implications. What are the implications? The outer fleet controls access to 3 major trade routes and serves as our first line of defense against incursions from the dark sectors. Zareth has personal ambitions that don't necessarily align with the Empire's interests. Marcus nodded, filing the information away. This was going to be more complicated than he had anticipated. Over the following weeks, Marcus threw himself into learning his new role. The Quantum Crown provided access to vast databases of Imperial knowledge, but raw information wasn't the same as understanding. He studied military tactics, economic policy, diplomatic protocols, and the complex web of alliances that held the Empire together. His days began before dawn in the strategy chambers, where he worked with senior advisors to understand the challenges facing the Empire. The entropy spiral had been defeated, but new threats were always emerging from the dark spaces between galaxies. Pirate fleets probed the outer defenses. Ancient automated weapons systems from long-dead civilizations occasionally reactivated and had to be dealt with. Economic pressures from competing trade confederations threatened the stability of border worlds. The Quantum Collective is demanding renegotiation of the Arcturus trade accords, reported Minister Kale, a tall, ethereal being whose species communicated partially through color changes in their transparent skin. They claim that recent advances in their technology deserve a larger share of the quantum crystal market. What's our position? Marcus asked, studying the economic projections floating in holographic display before him. Traditionally, we would remind them that the quantum collective exists at our sufferance, said Admiral Thyrex, a massive being whose species had evolved from pack hunters. A show of force usually resolves their enthusiasm. Marcus looked at the data more carefully. Actually, their technological advances are legitimate. And their current share of the quantum crystal market hasn't been adjusted in 200 years, despite significant improvements in extraction efficiency. The room fell silent. Marcus could feel the surprise radiating from his advisors. You're suggesting we accommodate their demands? Minister Kale asked, her skin shifting to colors Marcus was learning indicated confusion. I'm suggesting we negotiate fairly, Marcus said. The collective's innovations could benefit the entire empire if we find a way to incorporate them rather than suppress them. What if we offered them a larger market share in exchange for technology sharing agreements? Admiral Thyrex's expression was skeptical. The Zephyrian Empire does not bargain from a position of weakness. We're not bargaining from weakness, Marcus replied. We're showing that we're confident enough in our position to be generous. That's very different. The meeting continued for several hours, with Marcus gradually winning over his advisors through careful reasoning and detailed analysis. It was exhausting work, but satisfying in a way he hadn't expected. Every decision affected millions of beings across dozens of star systems. That evening, he found Princess Queen Lyralii in her private study, a circular chamber whose walls showed a real-time view of the galaxy rotating slowly around them. She was reviewing reports from the border sectors, her violet eyes tracking streams of data that flowed through the air like luminous ribbons. How did your first major policy meeting go? She asked without looking up. Better than expected, Marcus said, settling into the chair that had materialized for him. Though I think I surprised some people with my approach to the quantum collective situation. Thyrex sent me a private communication expressing concern about your soft negotiating style. She finally looked at him, her expression amused. He seems to think you don't understand the importance of maintaining imperial prestige. And, what do you think? I think Thyrex has been a soldier for so long that he's forgotten there are tools other than hammers. She gestured, and the data streams reorganized themselves into a tactical display. But he's not entirely wrong to be concerned. There are those who will interpret any gesture of accommodation as weakness. As if summoned by their conversation, an urgent communications signal chimed through the chamber. Lyralii accepted the call, and a holographic image of High Admiral Zareth appeared before them. Your Majesties, Zareth said, his crystalline features reflecting patterns of agitation. We have a situation in the Kepler sector. The Voidwalker Confederation is mobilizing along our border. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for military action. Marcus leaned forward. What kind of military action? Unknown, Prince Consort. But they've withdrawn their diplomatic staff from our border stations and begun moving their phase ships into attack formations. Lyralii stood, her expression becoming cold and dangerous. Recommendations? Deploy the 3rd and 7th fleets to the border, Zareth said immediately. Show them we won't tolerate aggression. If they want to fight, wait, Marcus interrupted. What's the history between us and the Voidwalkers? Have there been recent tensions? Zareth's faceted eyes shifted in what Marcus was learning to recognize as irritation. Prince Consort, with respect, military matters require immediate action. Historical analysis can wait. Answer his question, Lyralii said sharply. Zareth paused, clearly reluctant. There have been disputes over mining rights in the Nebula of Echoes. The Voidwalkers claim we're violating their ancient territorial claims. Are we? Marcus asked. Another pause. The claims are questionable. Based on pre-Empire territorial demarcations that may no longer be valid. Marcus looked at Lyralii, who nodded slightly. He was beginning to understand her expressions, and this one suggested she wanted to see how he would handle the situation. Admiral Zareth, Marcus said, before we deploy our fleets, I want a complete historical analysis of the Voidwalker territorial claims. I also want to know what resources we're extracting from the disputed territories and whether there might be alternatives. Prince Consort, every moment we delay gives them time to strengthen their position. Every moment we spend gathering information might prevent an unnecessary war, Marcus countered. Deploy reconnaissance probes to monitor their movements, but hold the fleets in reserve until we understand what we're actually dealing with. Zaratha's expression made it clear what he thought of this approach, but he nodded stiffly. As you command, Your Majesty. After the communication ended, Lyralii turned to Marcus with an expression he couldn't read. Zarath is furious, she said. He believes you're showing weakness in the face of potential aggression. And, what do you believe? I believe that in 2,000 years of rule, I've learned that understanding your enemy is always preferable to underestimating them. She moved to stand beside him, her presence both comforting and slightly overwhelming. But, I also know that there are times when the galaxy only understands strength. So teach me, Marcus said. Help me find the balance. Over the following days, as the intelligence reports came in, Marcus began to see the complexity of the situation. The Voidwalkers' territorial claims were indeed ancient, predating the Zephyrian Empire's expansion into the sector by several thousand years. But, those same territories had been abandoned for millennia before the Empire had begun mining operations there. More importantly, the resources being extracted were crucial to several Imperial technologies, and alternative sources would be difficult to develop quickly. It's not about right or wrong, Lyralii explained as they reviewed the data. It's about finding a solution that serves both empires' interests while maintaining the balance of power in the sector. What if we offered them a partnership in the mining operations? Marcus suggested. Their phase shift technology could actually make the extraction more efficient. That could work, Lyralii said slowly. But it would require them to accept Imperial oversight of their operations. The Voidwalkers are proud. They might see that as subjugation. Then, we offer joint oversight, Marcus said. A shared command structure for the mining operations, with representatives from both empires. Lyralii stared at him. You're suggesting we give them equal partnership in operations within Imperial space? I'm suggesting we give them a stake in the success of the operations rather than forcing them to choose between surrender and war. The proposal was radical by Imperial standards, but, as they developed the details, Marcus could see it taking shape. The Voidwalkers would provide advanced extraction technology and specialized labor in exchange for a 40% stake in the mining operations. Joint oversight committees would ensure both empires' interests were protected. When they presented the proposal to the senior advisors, the reaction was explosive. Unprecedented, Admiral Thyrex rumbled. We don't share Imperial resources with potential enemies. We're not sharing Imperial resources, Marcus replied calmly. We're creating a new partnership that benefits both empires while removing the cause of potential conflict. It sets a dangerous precedent, Minister Kale added, her skin cycling through colors that indicated deep concern. Every minor empire with a territorial grievance will expect similar treatment. Or, Marcus said, they'll see that cooperation with the Empire is more profitable than conflict. High Admiral Zarath was the most vocal in his opposition. This rewards aggression, he said, his crystalline features reflecting sharp patterns of anger. They mobilized their fleets against us, and our response is to offer them partnership? This will be seen as weakness across the galaxy. By some, perhaps, Lyralii said quietly. But, it will also be seen as strength. The confidence to choose cooperation over conquest, negotiation over annihilation. The debate continued for hours, with the advisors gradually divided into camps. The military leadership favored a show of force, while the diplomatic and economic advisors were intrigued by the potential benefits of Marcus's proposal. In the end, it was Princess Queen Lyralii who made the decision. We'll try Prince Consort Marcus's approach, she announced. Admiral Zarath, you'll accompany us to the negotiations as a show of our military strength. But, we go to build, not to threaten. Zaratha's expression made his feelings clear, but he nodded in acceptance. The negotiations took place in neutral space, aboard a diplomatic station that existed in the void between galaxies. The Voidwalker representatives were unlike anything Marcus had ever seen, beings that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in other dimensions, their forms shifting and phasing in ways that made them difficult to look at directly. The lead negotiator introduced himself as Phase Prince Kitharian, a being whose voice seemed to come from several dimensions at once. "We expected threats," he said, his form stabilizing enough for Marcus to make out what might have been features. "Instead, you offer partnership. This is unexpected." "The Zephyrian Empire has always preferred cooperation to conflict when possible," Marcus replied diplomatically. "Your people have legitimate historical claims to the Nebula territories. We have current operational investments. It seems logical to find a solution that serves both interests." "And if we refuse your generous offer?" Kitharian asked, his form shifting into what Marcus thought might be a more aggressive configuration. Admiral Zareth leaned forward, his crystalline body catching the light in patterns that spoke of barely restrained violence. "Then, you will discover why the Zephyrian Empire has endured for 50,000 years, he said quietly. Kitharian's attention shifted to Zareth, and Marcus could sense the two beings taking each other's measure. Finally, the Voidwalker's form shifted into what seemed like an amused configuration. "Strength and wisdom in the same delegation," he said. "Impressive. Very well, Prince Consort Marcus Chen. Let us discuss this partnership." The negotiations took 3 days, with representatives from both sides working through the complex details of joint operations, shared command structures, and resource allocation. Marcus found himself genuinely enjoying the process. It was like solving a multidimensional puzzle where every piece had to fit perfectly with all the others. When the agreements were finally signed, Kitharian approached Marcus privately. "Your approach intrigues us, human," the Voidwalker said. "In our experience, powerful empires only understand force. Yet you chose negotiation when you could have chosen annihilation." "Force has its place," Marcus replied. "But understanding usually works better in the long run." "Indeed. The Voidwalker Confederation will remember this. Perhaps other disputes might benefit from similar, creative solutions." As they returned to the Imperial flagship, Marcus felt a sense of accomplishment unlike anything he had experienced in the trials. This had been real diplomacy, real problem-solving that would affect the lives of billions of beings across multiple star systems. "Impressive work," Lyrelii said as they settled into their private quarters. "You turned a potential war into a profitable alliance." "We turned a potential war into a profitable alliance," Marcus corrected. "I couldn't have done any of that without your support." She smiled, and, for the first time since their bonding ceremony, it was entirely genuine. "Perhaps this partnership will work better than I anticipated." But, even as they celebrated the diplomatic victory, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Admiral Zareth's opposition had been too vocal, too persistent. And there had been something in the way some of the other senior advisors had looked at him during the negotiations, not just skepticism, but calculation. He was beginning to realize that becoming Prince Consort had made him more than just a partner to the most powerful being in the galaxy. It had also made him a target for anyone who saw opportunity in the Empire's changing dynamics. The real test of his worthiness was just beginning. The first assassination attempt came exactly 2 months after the coronation, during a routine diplomatic reception aboard the flagship. Marcus was speaking with Ambassador Thren from the Spiral Confederacy when the environmental systems in the reception hall suddenly began venting a colorless, odorless gas that his enhanced crown sensors identified as a neurotoxin specifically calibrated for human physiology. The attack was sophisticated and precisely targeted. The gas concentration was lethal to humans but harmless to every other species present. If Marcus hadn't been wearing the quantum crown, which included advanced life support systems, he would have died within minutes while everyone around him remained unaffected. Security Chief Vex, a formidable being whose species resembled armored reptiles with cybernetic enhancements, immediately locked down the reception hall and began investigating. Princess Queen Lyrelii appeared within moments, her violet eyes blazing with a fury that made the air itself seem to crackle with energy. "How?" she demanded as medics checked Marcus for exposure symptoms. "The toxin was introduced through the atmospheric recycling system," Vex reported, her metallic voice carrying undertones of professional anger. "Someone with high-level access to ship systems programmed a delayed release specifically timed to when the Prince Consort would be in this location." Marcus sat quietly as the medics worked, his mind racing through the implications. The attack hadn't been random or opportunistic. Someone had studied his schedule, analyzed his biology, and crafted a weapon designed specifically to kill him without harming anyone else present. Who had access to those systems? Lyralii asked. Senior staff only, Vex replied. Command crew, department heads, and anyone with administrative override privileges. Get me a list, Lyralii ordered. Cross-reference it with anyone who opposed the prince consort's appointment or has expressed dissatisfaction with recent policy changes. As the immediate crisis was contained and the reception hall cleared, Marcus found himself in the unexpected position of being the target of a palace intrigue. It was a scenario he had read about in historical accounts of Earth's monarchies, but experiencing it firsthand was entirely different. This is my fault, Lyralii said quietly as they returned to their private quarters. I should have anticipated this. Change always creates resistance, and your appointment has changed everything. Who benefits if I'm eliminated? Marcus asked, settling into a chair that molded itself to his form. What happens to our partnership if I die? The crown bond can only be severed by mutual consent or death, Lyralii explained. If you die, I revert to sole rule, and the empire returns to its traditional power structures. Marcus nodded, pieces of the puzzle beginning to fall into place. So anyone who wants things to go back to the way they were has motivation to eliminate me. The question is whether this is personal ambition or genuine political opposition, Lyralii said. There are those who believe the empire has grown too strong, too centralized. Some of our subject species might see your death as an opportunity to push for greater autonomy. Over the following weeks, Security Chief Vex's investigation revealed a complex web of discontent within the imperial hierarchy. The assassination attempt had been sophisticated enough to require inside knowledge, but the investigation was being systematically obstructed by what appeared to be a network of sympathizers. Someone is feeding information to the conspirators, Vex reported during a private security briefing. Every time we identify a suspect, they seem to know we're coming. Evidence disappears. Witnesses change their stories. We're dealing with more than just a lone assassin. Marcus studied the investigation files, looking for patterns. His training in xenobiology had taught him to think systematically about complex organisms, and he was beginning to think of the conspiracy as a kind of parasitic organism within the Empire's power structure. Look at the timing, he said, highlighting several incidents on the timeline display. The security breaches, the missing evidence, the witness intimidation, they all follow a pattern. Someone is always one step ahead of the investigation, but only in specific areas. You think there's a leak in the security department? Lyralii asked. I think there's a leak in every department, Marcus replied. But not from disloyalty. From routine communication. What if someone has access to our general communication channels and is monitoring our investigation in real time? Vex's armored features showed interest. You're suggesting internal surveillance rather than active betrayal? I'm suggesting that whoever is behind this has found a way to monitor our activities without needing inside sources, Marcus said. The question is how? The answer came from an unexpected source. During a routine maintenance check of the ship's quantum communication array, one of the technical crews discovered what appeared to be a minor calibration error in the system's encryption protocols. Further investigation revealed that the error was actually a sophisticated monitoring program that had been piggybacking on routine maintenance updates for months. Elegant, Vex admitted as they reviewed the technical analysis. No active infiltration required, no need to turn anyone into a traitor. Just a passive monitoring system that reports everything back to whoever installed it. Can we trace its origin? Marcus asked. The installation was masked as a routine security update, the chief technician reported. But the coding signatures suggest it originated from the Crystal Order's Quantum Research Division. Marcus felt his blood chill. High Admiral Zareth was from the Crystal Orders, and he had been consistently opposed to Marcus's appointment and policies. If Zareth was involved in the conspiracy, it explained both the sophistication of the attacks and the advanced warning the conspirators seemed to have about every security move. We need to be careful, Lyralii warned when Marcus shared his suspicions. Zareth has been a loyal servant of the Empire for over 4 centuries. If we accuse him without absolute proof, we risk alienating the entire Crystal Order's confederation. And if we don't investigate him and he's behind this, we risk another assassination attempt, Marcus countered. One that might succeed. They decided on a careful approach. Rather than confront Zareth directly, they would feed false information through the compromised communication channels and see how the conspirators responded. If Zareth was involved, his reaction would reveal his guilt. The trap they set was elegant in its simplicity. Marcus announced through official channels that he would be traveling to the Arcturus research station to personally oversee the implementation of the new quantum collective partnership agreements. The announcement included detailed security arrangements, travel schedules, and even the specific ship he would be using. None of it was true. Marcus remained aboard the flagship while a holographic double made the publicized journey. But the conspirators didn't know that. The attack on the fake convoy was swift and professional. 3 unmarked ships intercepted the transport vessel carrying the holographic Marcus, using weapons that appeared to be of Crystal Order's design. When the attacking ships realized they had been deceived, they attempted to flee, but Imperial patrol vessels were waiting for them. The captured attackers refused to identify their sponsors, but their equipment told a clear story. The ships were registered to a private security company that had been contracting with several Imperial departments, including the Outer Fleet command structure that Zareth had been seeking to control. Circumstantial evidence, Lyralii said as they reviewed the investigation results. Enough to justify increased scrutiny, but not enough to prove direct involvement. Then, we dig deeper, Marcus said. If Zareth is involved, there will be other connections. Financial records, communication logs, something that ties him directly to the conspiracy. But, as they began preparing for a more detailed investigation, events took an unexpected turn. Admiral Zareth requested a private meeting with Marcus, claiming he had vital information about the security situation. It could be a trap, Vex warned. If he's behind the attacks, this meeting could be another assassination attempt. Or it could be a genuine attempt to share information, Marcus replied. We won't know unless we take the risk. The meeting was arranged in a neutral location, the diplomatic quarters aboard the station where the Voidwalker negotiations had taken place. Security was extensive but discreet, with both parties allowed to bring minimal escort. Zareth arrived precisely on time, his crystalline features reflecting patterns that Marcus had learned indicated deep concern rather than aggression. He was accompanied only by a single aide, and his body language suggested genuine anxiety rather than hostile intent. Prince Consort, Zareth said formally, I must speak frankly about the situation facing the Empire. Please do, Marcus replied, studying the High Admiral carefully for any sign of deception. There is indeed a conspiracy against your rule, Zareth continued, but I am not its architect. I have been investigating it independently, and what I have discovered disturbs me greatly. He produced a data crystal and placed it on the table between them. The conspiracy extends far beyond personal ambition or political opposition to your policies. There are forces at work that seek to destabilize the entire imperial structure. Marcus accepted the crystal and plugged it into a secure data reader. The information that flowed across the display was staggering. Financial records showing massive fund transfers to mercenary organizations. Communication logs indicating coordination with pirate fleets in the outer sectors. Most disturbing of all, evidence of contact with entities from the dark sectors, the unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim where ancient and hostile intelligences were known to exist. The entropy spiral was not destroyed as completely as we believed, Zareth said quietly. Fragments of its influence remain, and they have been reaching out to disaffected elements within the Empire. The assassination attempts on you are just the beginning. They intend to create a civil war that will leave the Empire vulnerable to external invasion. Marcus studied the data more carefully, cross-referencing it with information from the security investigation. The picture that emerged was terrifying. The conspiracy wasn't just about removing an inconvenient human from the throne, it was about destroying the Zephyrian Empire entirely. Why bring this to me? Marcus asked. Why not present it to Princess Queen Lyralii directly? Zareth's crystalline features shifted into patterns that indicated deep discomfort. Because according to my analysis, the conspiracy reaches into the highest levels of the imperial hierarchy. I do not know who can be trusted with this information. Except me? You are the target, Zareth said simply. Which means you are either innocent, or this is an extraordinarily elaborate test of my loyalty. I have chosen to believe the former. Marcus spent the next hour reviewing the evidence in detail, asking probing questions about sources and verification methods. Zareth answered everything with the precision of a military professional, and gradually Marcus began to accept that his suspicions about the High Admiral had been wrong. If this information is accurate, Marcus said finally, then, we're dealing with something much larger than palace intrigue. This is an existential threat to the Empire. My analysis suggests the conspirators will make their primary move within the next few weeks, Zareth said. The evidence indicates they're planning something during the Festival of Unity when representatives from all member species will be gathering aboard the flagship. The Festival of Unity was the Empire's most important celebration, occurring every 5 years to reaffirm the bonds between member species. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy would be present, making security an enormous challenge. The perfect opportunity for a devastating attack, Marcus realized. Maximum symbolic impact, maximum casualties among the leadership of every member species. Precisely, Zareth agreed. And, with you and Princess Queen Lyralii both present, the conspiracy could potentially eliminate the entire Imperial command structure in a single action. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a physical force. The trials had tested his individual worthiness, but this was testing his ability to protect not just himself or even the Empire, but the entire structure of galactic civilization. What do you recommend? He asked. Cancel the festival, Zareth said immediately. Declare a state of emergency, postpone the celebration until we can identify and eliminate the conspirators. That would cause massive disruption, Marcus said, thinking through the implications. And it would signal to the conspirators that we know about their plans. They might accelerate their timeline or find another approach. The alternative is allowing them to proceed with what my analysis suggests will be a coordinated attack involving multiple simultaneous strikes against critical infrastructure. Marcus studied the data again, looking for alternatives. What if we don't cancel the festival, but use it as an opportunity to draw the conspirators into the open? Set our own trap? Zareth's crystalline features reflected sharp patterns of alarm. Prince Consort, the risk is acceptable if it means ending this conspiracy permanently, Marcus said. Instead of defensive measures, we go on the offensive. Let them think their plans are proceeding, but be ready for them. It was a dangerous gamble, but, as Marcus reviewed the evidence, he realized it might be their only chance to root out the conspiracy completely. If they simply reacted defensively, the conspirators would adapt and try again later. But, if they could draw them into a comprehensive attack and defeat it decisively, they could eliminate the threat entirely. I need to discuss this with Princess Queen Lyralii, Marcus said. Will you support our decision, whatever it is? Zareth's crystalline form reflected patterns that Marcus now recognized as military resolve. I serve the Empire, Prince Consort. If you believe this is the best course of action, you will have my full support. As they prepared to return to the flagship, Marcus realized that the conspiracy had inadvertently accomplished something important. It had forced him to truly think like a ruler, to make decisions that balanced enormous risks against potential outcomes. The trials had tested his individual capabilities, but this crisis was testing his judgment as a leader. The Festival of Unity was only 2 weeks away. If Marcus was right, it would be the final battleground where the conspiracy would either be crushed or succeed in destroying everything the Zephyrian Empire had built over 50 millennia. The young human who had accidentally sat in the wrong chair was about to face the ultimate test of his worthiness to wear the crown. The Festival of Unity transformed the Eternal Majesty into something beyond a starship. It became a floating city of lights, music, and celebration that could be seen from neighboring star systems. Representatives from over 300 species had arrived for the 5-day celebration, each bringing